Credits, baby. We did it. Okay, let's see. First things first. The bottom... Oh, that's okay. We can let it pause and we'll turn the music off. That's fine. It's usually too loud anyway. The bottom center of the screen says that we have beaten 24 games in 2024 and 471 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers are lies. We have now beaten 25 games in 2024 and 472 since we started doing this in 2020. Let's go. All right. So, yeah, I have thoughts. The reason that I played this game is because I think my uncle had it on a cartridge when I was really little, and I remember the box art for it, and I remembered a couple of little details about the game, like the fact that it was on a grid, and I remembered that Mothra was in it, but I didn't really remember the levels or the boss fights or anything like that. But I wanted to play it just because of that. There's a few games on the list that they're like, I either played this briefly or watched it briefly as a kid, and now I want to see what it's like. So this was one of those. So I really didn't know what to expect going into it, except there were a few things that I did expect, just because it's an old Nintendo game. I expected it to be janky, and I expected it to be hard. I was half right. It is janky. It's very janky. The way that there's very often way too much stuff on the screen, and it all starts blinking out and slowing down like old Nintendo games do sometimes. That happened a lot, all the time. And the hitboxes are maybe worse than Ninja Gaiden. I mean, they're horrible. I'll be just punching right through something, and it's just not taking damage. Or sometimes I'll punch something that I think is supposed to be taking damage, and then something over here will take damage instead. The hitboxes were real bad. So it was very janky. But it was not hard. I was expecting, usually games with that much jank, they're unfairly difficult, they're frustrating. You get hit and you just go, wah, 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 and you get stun locked anytime anything touches you. And touches you is a loose definition, because something will get even into your vicinity and you'll just start going, wah, 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 and you can't move, just completely get stun locked. So it sounds frustrating, right? Except for the fact that the game itself is pretty easy, and the reason I think that it's easy is you start out with a generous amount of health, more than games like Ninja Gaiden or Mega Man usually. Like, you can get hit a lot. But on top of that, the game is constantly dropping health. Half of the enemies you kill, it seems, they'll drop health, and so that heals you for like half of your health bar every time you get one of those things. So it's kind of hard to die. Plus, there is a leveling system in this game, which I did not expect, where as you kill more bosses and get past more areas, you gain levels, and every time you gain levels, the only thing that really seems to happen is you get more health and more of your superpower, like MP, basically. And so as the game goes on, it gets easier and easier, because the levels don't really get any harder. The levels are kind of pretty static. I mean, they were about as hard at the end as they were at the beginning. The only thing that's really different is there's maybe a few more things on the screen, and those like fireballs that can really hurt you show up more often. But still, like, they got pretty easy to dodge toward the end, especially with Mothra. So I only got hit by those a few times, and when you do, toward the end, your health bar is so huge, it doesn't even matter. You can tank everything in the game, including the bosses. So I would normally think, well, that's too easy. But I actually think in this particular case, I had more fun with it, because with how janky the game is, I wouldn't want it to be more intentionally difficult than it is, because then it would just be frustrating. So I actually didn't mind that it was very generous with health. And the bosses were fun. They were broken. They were broken. You basically there's only two ways that a fight can end. You cheese the boss to death, or they cheese you to death. That's really, there's no real fair fighting in this game. You're either cheesing them by like shooting at their feet over and over again and stun locking them, or they've got you cornered. It's basically a contest of who can cheese who first. Because basically, once you get an enemy cornered on their side of because it's like a fighting game, once you get an enemy cornered on their side, there's nothing they can do. There's a couple of exceptions later on in some of the later bosses that they can kind of get out of it from time to time, but once you get them hit backed into the corner, they're fucked. There's nothing they can do to really kill you. And if they back you into a corner, you're fucked until they decide to back off, which they usually did eventually. And so the bosses were, that sounds horrible, but the bosses were still kind of fun because they looked cool, and they were. I just enjoyed getting to see all the different ones. By the way, let me talk about that real quick. I think that this game is underrated when it comes to music and graphics. I thought the graphics looked really cool for very classic pixel. Like, it looked cool. The game looked good. I thought the retro pixel art style aged beautifully, and that's often true with NES games, but sometimes it's not. And usually the games that you do that do age well in that department, you hear more about later. Nobody ever talks about this game. And then the music was incredible. The music was top tier. The music was like, maybe not quite Mega Man level, but I think close. The music was great. I loved the music. So all that stuff was on point. So between that and, the fact that it wasn't that hard and I was getting through it pretty quickly, I did enjoy it. I did have fun with it. It was pretty easy, though. I only died 3 times. All 3 of those times were Godzilla. I never died with Mothra. But Godzilla can't really dodge in this game. You just have to tank everything you come across. And there were a couple of times that was too much. Every time was against a boss, though. And I did die to the final boss once. But then Mothra came in and cleaned it up. And it was fine. And by then, the health bars are so massive that it like takes a million years for anyone to die. But yeah, I did enjoy it. It's definitely broken. It's definitely got a lot of problems. I can see in one way how maybe it wasn't that memorable. I was saying this while I was playing the end part, is that, like everyone remembers Ninja Gaiden because they sunk hundreds of hours into it sometimes and never beat it. I could see how this game wouldn't be as memorable because you can beat this game in an afternoon, even if you're not spam saving or like actually on the original hardware. I never loaded a save state. I saved a few times, but I never actually had to load one because even when you die, as long as one of your other characters is alive, you're okay. You can still beat the level. And then when you get to the next level, you're both back. So I never had to reload. I don't know what the game over in this game looks like. Yeah, it's definitely broken. It's definitely got a lot of problems, but it makes sense that people wouldn't remember this game because if they did play it, they played it once, like one afternoon, and probably never came back to it because they beat it. So it's an easy game. It's easy. It's easier than any Nintendo game I've ever played. I've had a lot of people, especially when I make my videos about Kirby games, where I say I died 148 times playing Kirby's Adventure or something. People are like, Kirby's Adventure, that game's easy. Well, it's not that easy. It's easy to die from time to time. You get hit a few times, you die in that game. It happens. But this really is that easy. This really is a game that like you can go get. If I just sat down and started this game again right now, I bet I could get through the whole game without dying. The only question mark would be the final boss. And that I still bet I could do. Just because the very first time I fought him, I roasted his health bar. So now I know his moveset, I bet I could get through this whole game without dying once. Which isn't even necessary in order to get through it. But I did have fun with it. I have no idea where I'm going to rank it because it's so like the actual quality of the game is not that high. But this is one of those games that I enjoyed more than it probably deserves. If this game had been very difficult on top of being janky, I would have hated it, and I probably would have quit. But it was easy. Games just blew through it. So, but I enjoyed that. I don't have a problem with that. I do not have. If this game were like really crisp and clean, like a Mario game or something, and there wasn't a lot of jank, and it was this easy, I might be disappointed. But since this game is so messy, I'm glad that it was easy. Honestly. All right, we did it. Oh, it's fun though. I enjoyed it. I have no idea where I'm going to rank it. I'll have to think about it. It's not going to rank that high, but I did enjoy it. All right, this would normally be the part of the game or part of the video where I'd say last order of business. We're going to delete you from our console and never play you again. But you can't play this on modern consoles. I had to emulate it. So we'll just say goodbye, Godzilla. Thank you for being a friend. And we did enjoy you. There. Gone. All right.